Hey, Julen.
Hi,
How are you doing, doll?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you?
I'm good. Katie has sort of joined us.
Mhm.
So if dog ears or nose pop into screen, you don't have to be distracted by that. You know that for some reason the dog wants to be in my lap while we talk today.
I think it just
Um,
enhances the experience.
yeah, great. But I'm excited to talk to you today about your kind of journey through the artist circling program and kind of like what you've got from it and things like that.
Mhm.
I've got a few questions if we get stuck and we want me to. I've got question prompts I've thought of before I called you here. But I would love if you would just start with like a brief bio intro, like who you are, how you discovered our original circling approach, and what inspired you to want to join the Art of Circling program. And then we'll go from there.
Alrighty. Um, I often struggle to know how to respond, like, who am I? Um, so maybe I'll start by how I got into it, uh, into circling. I mean, I guess like the usual script is like I I am inclined towards the arts. I spend most of my time professionally and personally doing audiovisual communication. So I'll do like film production and music. My real main passion, or my strongest passion, really is human nature, understanding the nature of being. I just find myself to be the most interesting thing in the world. And by myself, I don't mean like me, Julen, but just being human.
Mhm.
Um, and so I'm really keen on communicating as well, on communication, uh, which is why I won't necessarily, go to like, oh, I'm a filmmaker.
Mhm.
Basically, it's like whatever it is, whatever with the shifting tools and technology, I just want to remain a really good communicator, storyteller,
Mhm.
leveraging what's at hand in the day and time.
I'm going
And
to pause you there because it's so funny because being from LA, or at least you're living in LA now, it's so I don't know, like the actors are, always asked to slate before they do anything, and they're like, I'm this person, I'm this age, I'm this height, da da da. For context for our community, um, you're 28.
no, that is very lovely. No, I mean, I'm not that much older. I'm 33 years old and I'm from Mexico City.
But and how long have you been in the US?
I've been in the US. This is my gonna be my seventh year.
Okay. And you're
Yeah.
originally from Mexico City.
I'm originally from Mexico City,
And you
born and
came
raised.
and you came to California for film?
Yeah, I came to California for film and music, essentially. I also have two brothers that are living here, so it made sense because there's family here. They're also in the industry. One of them is in the film industry, the other's in the music industry. Um, so it kind of,
Very artistic family.
yeah, so it made sense to come to LA for a
So,
number of reasons.
okay. All right. Just in case people are trying to identify with you. It's funny because I made you younger too. It's probably because you're just cooler than any 33-year-old should be. Um, cool. All right, great. And
And not I think, but how I landed here in AOC would be more through I guess, like the philosophical avenue. I really enjoy John Vervaeke's work. Uh, Once again, that really appeals to my core passion of understanding,
Mhm.
the nature of being. Um, and so through seeing a number of his lectures, I eventually attended one of his workshops of the Circling and Dialogos, or
Yep, circling and
is
dialogos.
that the name? Yeah.
Yep.
Um, that was my first contact with circling. And I remember that it really stood out or what really stood out to me about that first workshop was the communicational technology employed. Uh, and I was like, this is really cool. And then obviously using that, being able to explore, certain concepts or virtues in the philosophical sense at great length and depth, and it was really, really, really cool. And then some time went by, and then I was able to take a second round of these workshops, and that's where I came into contact with more of the circling community.
Mhm.
Um, got to get to know you better.
Mhm.
And then I think the second time it really caught my attention again. It's like, there it is again. Like, this is incredible. And again, it seems to be like this perfect combination of what I'm really interested in, which is exploring human nature through relation and communication. So it was really, really scratching that itch in an irresistible way. And then, yeah, that I think that that second time really opened me in a more explicit way to being curious about circling.
I think you, I think you have one of our self-study programs too, like sovereign self-study
Mhm.
as well.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That was kind of like in my,
Little toe dip
yeah,
into
exactly. Exactly.
philosophy because those self-study programs where I mean our experiential workshops are lovely and they're so much fun, to be in.
Mhm.
But those self-study programs, if you're hungry for like the theoretical and philosophical underpinnings of the
Mhm.
experiences you're having, the self-study programs are like rich and heavy in the theory and the philosophy more so than the live experiential workshops.
Yeah.
So I remember like feeling really excited knowing your penchant for philosophy. I remember feeling excited, but also a little bit nervous about you being in the art of circling. And I'm like, you know, is this going to be deep enough for him? And or like, is it going to feel like too kind of like, I don't know, fluffy or too like, okay, we're having all these experiences, but I need someone to explain the model to me, or I need someone to like, that more, you know, philosophical, theoretical um, undertone. Yeah,
Yeah, I really,
how that's
mhm.
been for you.
I love that you're bringing that up because once again, I feel really what gave me the justification almost to like really try it out was how solid the philosophical foundation is. I love listening to guys, musings and Guy and John is that gave me a lot of the confidence. And I will say though that one of the reasons why I'm really loving it, for me, philosophy, even though I really enjoy the aesthetic side of it, like getting into like really abstract spaces, is really fun. I do enjoy that about philosophy a lot. However, my main focus and attraction to philosophy is, I feel like in the original pursuit of how does this inform my life? How does this actually apply
Yeah.
into my
Yeah.
every moment in existence? Which is why I'm also really interested in certain like mindfulness practices and whatnot. And I think what really got me more enamored with circling is that it's precisely that, at least to my current understanding,
Mhm.
and not just cognitive propositional understanding, but experiential emotional understanding. It really is scratching that itch of practical philosophy, and that's what I want to dedicate my life to. It's like,
That like really like I love that you're getting this and that you're naming it. It's like it really is like a practical applied philosophy. It's like it's a way of being. Like
Mhm.
in learning the circling approach, you then get to apply these principles and practices to your every waking moment. And they're, I mean, I'm biased, being where I am, but like I really believe they're life changing.
Absolutely.
Okay. And now that you're like 90% of the way through the program, I'm wondering like in what ways have you felt them be kind of life altering or even just like tiny incremental shifts that made a big difference?
Mhm.
And I'm also curious, have people in your community or like the people in your world noticed shifts or changes in you or in your relationships with them
Mhm.
as you move your way through the program?
Yeah. Yeah, I notice that I'm already getting excited to like answer the question. Um, I've definitely noticed it's had a lot of impact in my day to day,
Mhm.
which is again feeding into my excitement of really lived philosophy in a really profound way. And so I feel even like from the get-go of sovereignty, um, even that alone would be enough to really feel truly transformational. So I feel being able to, yeah, by the way, I was slightly distracted because there's a neighbor singing
Well,
quite loud.
is the neighbor singing well, or is it a torturous neighbor singing?
Well, I think part of my distraction was trying to get in tune to identifying qualities of the singing. Regardless, yeah, I think not. I think I want to share that as I was saying, even the foundations of sovereignty. First off, are really consonant with the current chapter I'm going through in life of setting boundaries, of being able to express oneself in a way that becomes more easier to be received by
Yeah,
others, you know?
yeah. I always what I like to say about sovereign is like A, you can say almost anything to someone as long as you do it in a sovereign manner and it's going to be well received. But
Mhm.
what I don't know if this hits for you, but what I've learned in my 15 years of studying and teaching it is there's a way that it's enrolling. It's not just easy to be heard, but it almost has it like enrolls the person in what you're saying.
Mhm.
And I don't know a better way to say that other than calling it kind of like inviting or enrolling.
Yeah.
Have you had that experience of like when you're sharing, it's not just like, oh, it's easier for them to receive and it's easier for them to take, for them to, take in, but it has them actually like lean in, want more,
Mhm.
want to participate. Like there's
Yeah.
something inviting and enrolling about it.
And I've even noticed in a number of occasions that when I'm speaking in that way, the person I'm speaking with will start mirroring the way that I'm talking and be
Mm.
able to stop themselves a bit and also communicate like, well, in my, yada yada, which I think is just really fun and helpful.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I guess like in a nutshell, it really has had a tremendous impact on my day to day by the just the fact that relationship is everything, or a way of thinking about everything like at an ontological level is relation. So learning how to relate better, I don't know how to spend my time in a better way than learning how to relate
I
better.
don't know, a more noble pursuit.
No, it really is transformational. And I don't want to sound hypey or whatnot, but there's something which is again is what gives me for me my comfort and footing is just how solid the philosophical underpinnings are. Uh, in practice, it's been incredibly transformative. And the other question, or the kind of second thing there of how have other people in my life responded, definitely had a number of people either stop the conversation or at the end of the conversation being like, "Hey, like you're a really good listener,"
Mhm.
um, or simply open up so much more. And it's such a gift to be able to receive, and it's such a gift to be able to give to people your attention. There's a phrase like that, and it's like the minimal expression of love is attention. So yeah, there's something really incredible about being able to have some sort of system or practice around how we pay attention to others and to ourselves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if I'm tracking your share correctly, it sounds like you're saying that, the things that you have been learning throughout this art of circling program thus far have helped you develop your skills of attention and listening and communication in such a way that not only do you feel more like impactful and effective in communicating, like you're more in touch with your needs, your boundaries, your feelings. You feel more capable of expressing those to other people. And then as a bonus, the people in your world are telling you like, oh, like you're a really good listener. Like
Mm.
I'm really enjoying like being around you and like I feel like seen and heard and understood by
Hmm.
um oh, I love knowing that. I'm so glad because that is what we want for you and for all of the students of like that's why we're here. We're trying to change the way that people relate, whether it be romantic relationships or friendships or work relationships. We want to up level the relating.
So funny because I'm trying to, yes, you mirrored back. All of that is very much accurate in my experience. And what's coming to me right now, I'm trying to find a way to word it that doesn't sound so euphemistic or like, yes, buy this course, but it's like independently, this is sincerely at the bottom of my heart or at the center of it, wherever you'd like to place it. Really, relation is so fundamental. How we relate is so fundamental to who we are and what we are. And in my current understanding, so many of the problems in the world, in our families, falls to a lot of it can be understood as a lack of ability to communicate effectively. So much of it.
And to listen effectively.
That's the second thing. More and more, the way that I've been understanding life is, or my relation to life is, initially I said I want to become a better communicator. And really behind that, I just want to become the best listener that I can. And I don't just mean as in listening to someone talk, but listening in general, listening to life, listening to myself, listening to my breathing, to music.
Mhm.
Listening, the act of listening, of truly listening, is a really interesting thing, of allowing something in you in a way that changes you simultaneously.
Yeah.
And the fact that this approach, this practice, really hones in on that is just so fucking cool.
Yeah. Oh, it's funny. Like I'm like now I can't wait to see the new short film, hear any new music from you because A, you already were a rich and deep and beautiful communicator, a powerful uh artist in your own expression. But there's something about like I have goosebumps listening to you talk about how your listening has opened up even greater. And like, I'm so excited to see what happens as you listen to life, to people, to your own heart in these deeper and broader ways. I'm so excited to see, like, oh, and what did that make available for your art, for your film, for your music? Like, how did your expansive listening inform your art? I'm like, I can't wait. I almost want to be like, hey, can we wrap this chalk so that you can show me the film you're working on?
I'm really happy that you're bringing that up. That's something that was coming up for me as well in this conversation, that it's had a really significant impact also in my creative endeavors. So not just in my interpersonal relationships, not just in my personal relationship, which is a beautiful work in progress, which benefits so much of listening.
Well, let me just pause right there because to see a, strong, successful, beautiful, cis hetero man talk about increasing his relationship with himself, like that is just gourmet nourishment for my soul. Like, not only has that been I mean, in my generation, that's a heartfelt battle to like even be allowed to do that. But to see you like celebrate it with gratitude, like, oh, Julen, I'm just so moved by like
Um,
even just like your attention on that of like, I am improving my relationship with myself, like, and to make that a priority. Yeah.
that is so sweet of you. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you for doing the work and being such a great example model for other men.
That is very sweet of you. Thank you.
Okay, I'm sorry. So back on track.
Yeah, well, I mean that kind of keeps being an emphasis on sovereignty. Um, because it really is coming in tune with oneself in a very important way, very, very important way. That is, and this is part of actually segues well with what I wanted to share, which is just how consonant what I'm learning here is with my other practices, both therapy, what I'm seeing there in my meditation practice. It beautifully dovetails into everything,
Mhm.
and only complements it in a wonderful way. Because learning to set boundaries, learning to reparent and befriend oneself with the added tools of circling, of really placing that emphasis in how to relate, how to open, how to listen to oneself, plus the tools of mindfulness. Like it's just everything feeds into this really
Mm.
wonderful toolkit of self-discovery and growth.
Yeah.
Um, and I've been noticing it also really come through in the creative act. Um, or rather, I've been seeing how the creative act is basically very synonymous with circling, because it requires this openness, this wonder, this lack of agenda, and whenever there starts being an agenda, it kind of
Goes wonky.
amps it a bit. There has to be an agenda at some point, but rather in my personal relation with creative stuff,
Mhm.
it almost always is way much more of an act of mutual discovery.
Yes.
The
Much like the circling approach.
the
Like,
conversation and the same principles apply of the more in wonder one is, the more open and in a collaborative, invitational way. For me personally, at least, the creative act comes through in a more
yeah.
effortless way.
And tends to be more extraordinary than you ever could imagine or you ever could have controlled it into being.
That
Like
yeah.
if you had a tightly held agenda, other than an agenda of like, oh, I'm gonna write a song
Hmm.
and see what evolves. Like, oh, I'm gonna take these chords and see what they grow into. Like, so there has to be some sort of agenda,
Absolutely,
but
yeah.
it's like an explicit, open, loosely held agenda. Like
Hmm.
we're gonna get into contact with like what is, or like, oh, I want to explore. If we're going back into the circling approach, like, oh, I want to explore like why I have such a hard time setting boundaries with this specific person in my life.
Hmm.
That's all. That's just you know that loosely held agenda, and then we're just allowing ourselves to be in relationship with openness, curiosity, wonder, you know uh impact, reflection, so that we can co-discover like what's in the blind spots and what's in the periphery, and like what's in the hidden wisdom that we had to sift through all the rest of the bullshit to get to.
Hmm.
So I love, and not being an artist myself, I love imagining how those same principles and practices apply to the creative arts and
Hmm.
and what that could produce.
Yeah, I really appreciate that you're wording we're putting words to the, I guess, dual process, usually in creating something, of there being a sort of agenda.
Mhm.
Uh, there's a moment of exploration and then there's a moment of polishing, and it's kind of like this up and up. So often, though, for me, it's been so easy to just have the too much of an agenda, and it starts just scaring away the whatever is.
Yeah.
Well, I suppose what is at the moment is maybe a hyper expression of my ego at that point. Um, Also, want to say that you strike me as a very creative person. I can't speak for you, but I would imagine
Oh, well,
that
we'll have to have another conversation about that. I like it. I like being seen in that light.
hmm,
Maybe I am.
we'll have a conversation about that.
In our next episode,
In our
we'll
next,
do that, Julen.
yeah, I didn't get a chance to tell you. I mean, I don't know if this is the time and place, but in a specific project that I am working on, which was mid AOC, circling skills came to the rescue in a very explicit way because it's not, I won't go too into it, but it's a documentary, and the subject in question is a young man who has a really severe form of cancer,
Mhm.
and like a very aggressive stage 4 cancer. And when I got into the project, the friend who invited me into the project didn't give me much context other than that. And so they flew us out to Arizona. It's the first time I was meeting him and his family and was supposed to record him, to start filming. And just the nervousness of, okay, I'm about to come to a stranger's house in a really delicate situation, and I need to get something really honest from his experience. And I remember the first night because we kind of talked and stuff, like we had lunch, and he was asking me, "So what do you do?" These things that I struggle in answering. uh, Unfortunately, through the day and into the night, there was a point where I was like, "Why don't we sit down and we just no cameras, let's just talk." And very explicitly, circling came into the fore there. So together we started discovering things that he himself would say that it was the first time he was wording these things. And he was, oh wow, I didn't even realize that this is what I was feeling. And so it started, and thanks to that, the next few days of filming were really, we were getting a lot
Ah,
of vulnerable shares and authenticity. And he's a very stoic person. So there was a lot of opportunity for it to just be this very dry thing. It's a still ongoing project. So not only has it been in the manner of like person to person getting to know him, but also in once again in the creative process of discovering, 'cause documentary seems to be you're writing the script as you go. Writing scripts is an act of discovery in itself. I feel I've read so much from really esteemed writers how the process is inevitably this act of discovery. You write it and then you produce it, and there's still discovery while you're producing. However, my experience with a documentary is that the thing is presenting itself as you go,
yeah.
and you just need to be very attuned and open so that an agenda doesn't take over that much, but you're still trying to give it enough structure so that it captivates people's attention. It's really interesting, but circling has definitely impacted that.
Oh, I love knowing that. That, yeah, that, well, okay. So I mean, that answers the question of like, how is this filtering into the rest of your world? Um, yeah, it sparked other, like, I don't know why, but hearing that, I was like, ooh, it made me wonder like how the artist circling program like complements or compares to other kind of professional development or, other relational or communication training programs that you've participated in.
Hmm. So I don't think I've really participated in many other programs like this.
Mhm.
I am currently taking a training um, as a mindfulness meditation facilitator.
Mhm.
And one of the main things that is emphasized at the beginning is mindful speech. And there's a lot of that as a core tenet in Buddhist philosophy and mindfulness in general of mindful speech. And it just goes really, really well with what's happening in circling.
I was just thinking that I was like, oh, you're probably like ahead of your classmates, having come from here to there of like, oh yeah, this mindful speech thing.
Yeah,
Like,
it's very constant. I remember my one-on-one with my mentor, who is such a lovely woman, and she is so mindful in her speech. She expressed that she's actively like that. That's one of her active practices of being really mindful of where is this coming from and how am I expressing. And I mirrored at some point, I asked her a bit about herself. She gave me some background. And there was a moment where she was like, I don't know if that made sense. And I'm like, let me see if I got it. And she was like, oh my God, that was such a beautiful mirroring. And I'm like, oh, I'm so happy that that made you happy. Uh, so nice things all around. Um,
I love that.
yeah.
Having shared that, are there any parts of our program, since you're like, oh, I don't know, I don't have much to compare it to, are there any parts of our program that just in principle or in practice, you're like, oh, I really liked this, or I really appreciate that, or this was like really fun or really impactful? There's anything that comes to mind, um, whether it's philosophical or paradigmatic or even just experiential. There's anything that comes to mind that are like some favorite or like most valuable pieces of things you've experienced in the art of circling so far?
So much comes to mind, I'm leaving. Um, the first thing that's coming to mind is something that Guy shared, which really stuck with me. Because one of my main questions at the beginning was really like, well, why is this not therapy? Or what's
Mm.
the difference between this and therapy? And that answer came explicitly in the most recent weekend intensive, which seems to be that one of the core differentiators, from how I understood it, is that encircling, it's really coming from accessing wonder. And that just really stuck with me. So I feel that's really resonant with what tickles me so much about existence is this the sense of wonder and the fact that that's an explicit thing that is
Yeah,
encouraged and looked for.
it's a core faculty of the circling approach is to come from not a place of knowing or a desire to control or a goal to fix or give advice, but to be in wonder
Yeah.
with another or a group of others.
And I feel that in itself, because it's easily put into words, right? But when I sit to think about what that means, it opens up such a crazy wormhole.
Well, and it's funny, like what sparked for me when you're like, oh, it's easy to put words, and I was like, like kind of, but also, I mean, I've been talking about it for 15 years. I don't know that any words I could put to it come close to the experience of practicing it
Hmm.
with another or a group of others.
Hmm.
The the rich actual experience of that. Again, not to be like too like I don't know, hyperbolic. It's life changing.
It really is.
It's almost like it's like you once you see it, you can't unsee it. And once you experience it, you can't go back.
And that's the thing, you have to experience it. As you were saying, I also don't think I could really find the words. It's one of those things that, again, the easier said than done in the sense of, oh, just you have to come from wonder. It's like, well, what in my estimation, it's like I can't force wonder. So even then, there for me, the movement is one of very consonant with meditation, of opening, of allowing, of fundamentally changing the way that I'm relating to whatever is. It's am I able to suddenly see something beyond my current way of controlling, which is necessary, of putting terms to things and these habituated ways of narrativizing and understanding myself and the world. Can I, what is wonder? That in itself is what I mean. Like that in itself just has, for me, so much philosophical richness to for many lifetimes. What is wonder, and what does one or have to do to invoke it and to really operate from it? So that's like a big one that stood out. The other things that from circling I've gotten, and I guess really in the same lane, is it. I want to give like a little, what's it called, caveat. I was about to mention Socrates, but I know very little about someone's ringing the doorbell. I don't know if that's filtering in. No? Cool. So this is solely from my very tiny understanding of how, you
We,
know, how I go.
yeah, you get a little great grace. We know you're not a Socratic scholar. Yes.
There we go. Thank you. Um, but it seems that it's coming from that Socratic spirit of let's find something together with a little kind of wink in the back of there's no concrete answer to anything. But it's this really earnest, or I suppose what I'm perceiving through circling of what's encouraged is a really earnest openness to being with what is, which is a sort of courageous thing to do. It's asking us to drop away our premeditated opinions and impulses,
And expectations.
and to the point to even become aware of when they are showing up and even name them and put those aside. So you're really coming from a really wonderful place of we're in this together and let's see where things take us. And it's insane just how cool it unravels and unravels
Like,
until you kind of have to stop.
yeah, like, and as we're noticing our own noticings,
Yes.
and it, like, and especially someone who like revels in human existence and the connection between human beings, like this art, that we are practicing with one another, this model, or if you will, like, we're practicing being explicit about the things that we would normally like project or assume or let run in the background. And like the magic or the alchemy that happens when you go, oh, I noticed that when you said this, I assumed this. Or like that like one of the core teachings were like, don't assume you know what anything means.
Hmm. Hmm.
So even when someone's like, "Oh, I feel sad," we're like, "Oh, sad how?" Like what do you mean by sad? Like
Right.
we
Yeah.
don't just go like, "Oh," and then you just go, "Oh yeah, I understand that you're sad." Or like if you're like, "Oh, well, my mother embarrassed me," and you don't just go, "Yeah, I know how that is." You're like, "Oh, embarrassed you how? In what way? What was it like?" And like that, to get really granular and
Hmm.
nuanced in the distinctions of each other's experiences, it like like how can you not fall into wonder
Hmm.
if you just take the time to get curious
Hmm.
about another's experience?
Hmm.
So it's like it's funny that one of the most well-known quotes from Socrates of this unexamined life is not worth living. And it's, for me, I'm like, that's one of the core, essence of the circling approach, is that like we're lovingly and curiously examining everything,
Hmm. And in a way that's not. Mhm.
and together, not just like in
Right.
isolation, but like in community.
And that there's this thing where it's not examining from a point of anthropology or
Right.
sociology. You're like, oh, I'm so cute. Like,
Not like
why
a
do humans do
scientific
that?
examining, like
Right.
existential examining.
Yeah, it's a really touching examination. It's a really engaging, full-bodied, which is what for me makes it so enthralling. It's really psychedelic. It really is. Like when after during an exploration of these, which is I suppose why the workshop with John Vervaeke also felt really potent because this is the technology employed. That yes, suddenly you step back and you're like, whoa, we started here and look at all this that's unraveling, and it just keeps hinting at this ever receding, you know,
Or
something.
or our friends who like things to be a little more concrete and not as, uh, philosophical or ethereal as we do. Um, do you have like a favorite experience or a favorite exercise or a favorite like memory from your, what are we now in, six
Mm, 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 mm.
program?
Yeah, I think one of the first things that stood out to me when I think even when doing the self-study program, which seemed like such a simple thing, and it's been so impactful in my life, is within the scope of sovereignty, the invitation to not give advice. Like that was really revolutionary for me. And ever since, I've paid so much attention, both to my inclination sometimes to give advice and when others give me advice.
Yeah.
And of course, I would just invite anyone to actually try this out, or even to give a bit of time to think about why that could be important. To me, on the receiving end, when I'm expressing myself and the first thing I'm receiving feedback is advice, there's a huge skepticism of like, I don't think you really even understood what I'm trying to say, so this doesn't really mean much to me. And second, for the most part, I'm not looking for an answer. And that's one of the things that has just been so astounding to me over and over again. The, again, like the existential necessity to feel heard,
And
like how transformational it is to feel heard by someone
yeah, and understood,
and understood.
and I think with your mentor that you were talking about in the meditation program, like we see that in that story of like when she was like, I don't know if that made sense. And then you went, well, let me see. Here's what I understood. Am I like, here's what I'm getting from what you shared. Am I understanding you? And she was so moved by how richly and deeply you understood her. Yes. Oh, I love that that's your favorite thing.
Hmm.
Like, yeah, because I mean, there's so much that we do in these programs, and it was like, oh, they're like, there's this exercise where you like talk about your fears and you go through this, or there's this exercise where you take something that you're torn about and you future pace it to like, understand your intuition, what you're really wanting. Like, there's all these things that we do, and there's kind of like a like, I don't know, there's a sweetness and almost a validity in hearing you go, actually, this idea of prefacing how important it is to prioritize listening to and understanding someone over helping them, fixing them, giving them advice, trying to make them feel better. You know, try like sharing a similar story that you had so that they can feel like, not alone. Like
Right.
this, like all those things that we tend to instinctively do or that society tells us is how we become valuable.
Yeah.
And like what you're one of the highlights you're walking away from our program is like, actually it does not feel good to be on the receiving end or the giving end of those typical things,
Yeah.
and literally asking questions, these deepening questions, so that you can get a richer understanding, a knowing of this person, and then reflecting that back so that they know that you know them better. Like that's the thing that stood out for you most. I
Yes. 100%.
love that.
Think when I get circled, then I'm in the receiving end of someone giving me space, and it's just crazy
Mhm.
how good it feels when you feel understood. It's insane, and it's so basic, and that's what I love. That it seems such a simple principle, but it's so heavy.
Yeah, yeah, and that not and I love that you're even highlighting like, oh yeah, it's one of the first things that we're taught, in month one, and then we continue to hone and practice it over and over and over again in the next 6, 8 months, so that it becomes second nature to you.
Yeah. I
You
have
can't not do it anymore, even when you're like you're in a meeting, with a teacher in another program. You can't help but instinctively do it, you know.
I feel you mentioned this earlier today, but it's fundamentally changing how we relate with the world. It's not a mm, I was gonna liken it to learning a musical piece, but in a way that could be understood also as changing the way you relate. But yeah, it's not like a thing you walk away with. It's a
Yeah,
way
it's
of
not
life.
like a like isolated applied practice of like,
Uh-huh.
oh,
Uh-huh.
when I gather people and we make this explicit agreement that we're going to sit in a circle and we're going to do these things with
Mhm.
each other. I mean, it can be that,
Right.
but it's also so much more.
Yeah.
It filters into
Everything.
your way of being. It
It
up it up levels your personhood, if I can be so bold.
if you're a human being, it's so annoying because this is when it sounds just so like salesy. But honestly, like circling or not aside, learning how to relate with yourself in the world. If you're a human being, I don't see anything more relevant than that. Punto. And I was thinking this before circling, and circling has just enhanced it. So I don't want to come off as, you know, oh, this particular practice, it just so happens that this particular practice really taps into that in a very honest and powerful way.
I love it. And I love how honest and genuine being like, hey, whatever program or endeavor or model you're going to invest in, investing in a modality, a program, a endeavor. That was a quick endeavor. To improve the way that you relate, the way you listen, the way you communicate, the way you understand and seek to be understood is probably the most worthwhile endeavor any human being can undertake.
Yeah,
Just happen to offer one flavor of that or one option for it, you know, like, and if ours doesn't resonate with you, please seek out another one, but
right,
seek out one.
right.
Like,
And
do humanity a favor and invest in improving how you listen, communicate, relate.
yes, so it happens that this one's really cool with really lovely people. Uh, and I endorse it.
This one gets my stamp of approval,
Exactly. If
but
anybody cares about my stamp of approval.
for
Um,
what it's worth,
for what it's worth, yeah.
I
There's
love it.
I don't know how much time we have. There's like three or two main things that were coming to mind.
Yes, have at
One
it.
one is a concrete anecdote in this was in the earlier days of AOC, just to illustrate the impact that listening has on someone and just allowing someone to have space. I remember a friend of mine was expressing how she was feeling really lonely and starting to feel really confused about how she was feeling because of the topic that she was bringing up and how people around her were responding to it.
Mhm.
And obviously, I want to keep the details as private as I can, though I think I can share the general topic. It had to be to do with mortality and different questions around mortality. And apparently, her family members and friends were just getting scared of her bringing these things up and being like, "No, like, wait, do you need to see a therapist?" And so she was starting to even feel a bit gaslit and didn't know how to feel or whatnot. And I just remember being like, myself really curious and really wanting to hear her out. And so I was like, why don't we talk? And in that talk, it really was all about, at least from my behalf, I was just really wanting to understand what it was because at least from my interpretation and how she was wording, it's like, no, there's something important about this to you that you haven't been able to express. That's what I'm getting. And we talked for a good amount, like a couple hours, where she was able to just put words to what she was actually feeling and thinking. And I was just there to with her in a circling way of allowing those things that were showing up and asking about those and having her talk about it. And at the end of that, she was expressing a very earnest and important amount of gratitude and a weight that she felt off her shoulders from being able to feel a bit more understood and be able to actually ask these questions that are usually taboo in a way that didn't feel taboo. And at least personally, I just really felt that refreshing feeling from her tone of voice and how she was expressing it. And me as the person who was curious to listen to her, it was also really beautiful getting to really understand what these questions that were really wonderful and philosophical and important about death and our relationship with. And I just felt really tender also knowing that she hadn't been able to express it without people being overly concerned and giving her advice and just having her feel very even again gaslit by it.
Yeah,
Yeah, and so that's something that early on really stood out to me like, yeah, this there's something really important about making space for someone.
yeah. And to listen in a way that is not judgmental or critical or advice giving, protective, fixing, but like this, like you said, the spaciousness of our listening, of like the wonder and the curiosity. Oh,
Yeah.
good for you and your friend that, that she got that corrective emotional experience to balance out what was happening in other spaces.
It's funny because, in sharing these experiences, I really am trying to keep an eye on, it's like, I don't want it to feel or sound, uh, what's it called? Like self-aggrandizing. How do you say that?
Yeah, self-aggrandizing. Yeah,
Yeah.
you're not patting yourself on the back of like look
Right.
how great I am. But you're like, yeah, it is kind of funny to be to like have an invitation to say like, oh, here's how I, made a difference in this person's life, and here's how learning how to apply these made a difference in that person's life. Like it is an interesting
Yeah.
dance.
I guess as far as I can tell, it's coming from a place of wonder, being like, this is really cool. And again, when I'm in the receiving end, it feels amazing. And being able to relate with others in that way just leaves you kind of ecstatic after the interaction. Because I feel it shines a light to that mystery that I can't get enough of, like nectar. Like whenever we open up to that and really start opening to human experience, the mystery of being is just so present that it really is like a divine experience. I don't know how that's gonna sound to whoever's listening, but that's what I get off on is how many times a day can I awaken the deep mystery of existence? Because it's insane. Just think about it. It's crazy. Being alive is so insane. Being a person is so being is so insane. It's so complex and beautiful and sad and difficult and everything. Yeah.
All right, Julen, you said there were two things. What's the second final thing? And then I'll
The
well,
second final thing, in my experience in AOC, which of course goes hand in hand with all of this, is just how touching it's been to, in getting to interact with at first strangers who, of course, slowly stop becoming strangers, but just the shared human experience. Like it's so touching because this sort of practice really encourages a type of vulnerability and opening. Just glimpsing into the very latent and real uh, truth of others' sorrows and others, their realities, the complexity of each
boys, their
being.
triumphs and
Exactly. And just how much, even though there's such a variety of unique experiences, recognizing simultaneously both the really wonderful, kaleidoscope of different human experiences and all the through lines. It's like I'm relating to this, you know, 70-year-old woman in a way that's so intimate and so relevant.
Mhm.
And that's just really been life-changing as well, like really getting more of that on a more consistent basis.
Yeah. Yeah, there is. It's funny. I like to tease that the Art of Circling program is a professional development program wrapped in a personal growth program and then tucked into a mastermind group because I think it really serves all three purposes. Like, yes, we are teaching you concrete skills with sound theoretical and philosophical underpinnings that will improve your relationships, your communication, your listening, your life.
Yeah.
We're doing that. But then you're learning it in a closed cohort of anywhere from 20 to 30 people who have similar values and clearly, similar goals, desires, and possibly even belief systems from all across the world, different age groups, different countries, different, backgrounds, etc. And yet there's this shared thread of like humanity and desire. So now you've got your personal growth kind of like support group, that you're meeting with every 6 or 8 weeks live in our workshops, weekly in your practice groups, there's always either like a Discord or a WhatsApp thread where you guys are, talking to each other, um, which moves into that mastermind group. And like in the 70s, when they were related, this idea that, two or more people with their focus on the same goal is going to, you know, explore, imagine, progress exponentially more and
Mhm.
faster and deeper and wider than any one person doing it alone. And so it's like, yeah, sure, you could read like 14 different books and you could like sit zazen for, 6 hours a day, but you will not touch the things, in the same way in the, that you can do in relationship. Like there's some things that can only be discovered and practiced and understood like in relation to others, whether it's you need someone to trigger you or you need someone to hear you. It's like there's some of these things that can only happen in relationship, and that's one of my favorite parts of the program. Like I love our self-study programs. I think they're excellent for what they are, and I love it when people complement them with some of either the drop-in circling work or the closed cohort work or even the weekend workshops so that like you can take what you're learning and apply it in a relational setting with other live human beings.
Mhm.
Um, I'm glad that you're getting that experience. And it is funny to think about like, yeah, sitting in a room with, well, like in your cohort, like we have like um, a woman from that was, born and raised in Kenya and is own, and has her, set of experiences. And then we have someone who was like born and raised in the Mormon church and has their set of experiences. And then you have people in their 70s and you have people in their 20s and 30s and 40s. And it was interesting being at the end of the last session when Penny Ann pointed out like the age span,
Right. Yeah.
a 50-year age span of the 35 people on the screen right now and all the different walks of life, and yet like our shared humanity and the impact that we have on each other and the benefit of learning with and from each other.
Mhm.
I'm glad that that's the last thing you chose to point out. I think it's a really powerful one.
Mhm.
Anything else that's on your heart or mind that you want to say in order to feel complete, or you feel like you really want our community to know?
Hmm. I haven't drank enough water today.
All right. Well, before you pass out or become angry, I guess we'll say goodbye for now.
Yeah. No, it's been really lovely.
It's always a pleasure to drop in with you, Julen.
Yeah, likewise.
Until next time.
Thank you